Thank you. Kristen, you probably have a bigger role in this opera than you realize, because I heard over and over how you really helped Amy and Zane mold this into something that was different than where it started. And it's the community that, you know, gets together and does these kinds of things. I serve as the director of opera at the University of Utah, and I've been an NOA member for, I think, 5 years, and it was when the NOA convention came to Salt Lake City that was kind of, it made sense to go, right? And so I joined and was blown away by the energy and the spirit and the opportunity that the convention provided me, and I knew that I had to join and be a member. Honored to have been elected to the board yesterday, so it was a big deal for me. Thank you. So I don't want to talk much. The plan is for me to just introduce Zane and Amy and let them tell you the story of how this came to be and why it's important and why it's a bit different than other new works. And then I'll conclude and tie it together. But I think you're in for a wonderful story here, a discovery of sorts, to hear about how this opera came to be and hear Amy's wonderful story. And so with that, I will turn it over to Zane to talk about the libretto and the creative process, and probably he's going to talk about Amy too, so I'll get out of the way.
All right. So it's good to see everybody. Thanks for being here. It's an honor and a privilege to speak in front of such an esteemed group of people. This all started back in 2020 during the pandemic when Amy decided she was going to write an opera on Alice, and that's what she did. So she sat down and started sketching out some of the music and started sketching out some of the libretto. She was going to write the libretto herself. And I thought it was going fine. And so Amy, and so I'm a writer as well, but I've never, this was my first libretto that I've ever written with Amy. And just so it makes sense when I say I go downstairs with some words, I'll say that later on. Amy and I are, I met Amy 20 years ago, and that was that. We've been life partners since, and then creative partners for about 3 years. So Amy says, hey, I want you to look at something. I'm trying to figure out this thing called the nonsense aria. I want this nonsense song in the tea party. And will you have a look at it? What I've done is I've gone through the thesaurus. I've grabbed 30 words that mean nonsense. And I'm trying to sketch out the syllables and then piece the syllables together to make a song. And I said, I said, I think I can help. She did ask for help, by the way. I've learned that over 20 years. There's times to just listen and times to help. And so that was a time she did ask me to help. So I said, sure, let me have a crack at it. So, and that was the start of it. So it arranged these words like bourgeois and blatherskite and fandangle and pigwash and all these fun words that show up in the nonsense song. And then that was that. Then we wrote I wrote the libretto from there. Who has read Carol's novel, by the way? I'm just curious. It wasn't a prerequisite to come to this. I just want to make, just because I'm curious. I hadn't read it before we started working together. I was familiar with the film versions. So I sat down to read this book. And it's very different from the films. And so as I'm reading it, and I'd already told Amy I'd have a crack at the libretto, as I'm reading it, I think, you know that cold panic feeling you get inside sometimes? I'm like, I don't know what this is about. It's just about a bunch of stuff. I don't know what the red thread is to write through. What's the through line of this thing? So we played around with a few ideas, and I kept reading through the book. And then I'm sure it's happened to you, where the spark of something hits, and you go, that's the thing. That's the thing. And that's what happened. As I'm reading through again, I get to the caterpillar part. The caterpillar asks Alice, who are you? And that was it. I thought this opera is going to be about identity. It's going to be about figuring out who Alice is. Who is Alice? Why is that such a hard journey to figure out who we are, to hold on to that, to make that manifest in our lives in an authentic, genuine way, regardless what's going on out here, to keep this in here consistent? It's not easy because there's so much chaos going on out here, a lot like Wonderland. And the world is beautiful. I think it's gorgeous. The world is beautiful. Nature is beautiful. It's full of beautiful, wonderful people like yourselves who are creating, imagining, trying to make the world a better place, trying to clean up the world, trying to be good people, trying to make other people feel good about who they are. And like Wonderland, it can be a scary place where it's confusing and we don't quite get what's going on. There are people like the caterpillar who are trying to help us, but they're rude and it doesn't make us feel good, and we walk away wondering, like, that was helpful, but why did they have to say it like that, right? All the way up to the Queen of Hearts, who is this malignant narcissist, this character, this vainglorious character who is convinced of her own greatness and bends others to her will, including her little card, her throng of card sycophants who she has taken their minds and has bent them to her will. And so that's the world that we wanted to have Alice navigate. And I think it's not that different from the world that we as human beings try to navigate also, to hang on to the sense of who we are, that this is me, and that's okay, that I've got my strengths, I've got my flaws, I'm not perfect, but I think I'm all right, right? And getting out there and being that person, I think, is difficult. And it's made more difficult before we even realize it. I think this is what I've come to believe really strongly after working with a lot of people in different capacities. Is it is difficult to figure out and explain and live who we are. I believe, because before we're aware, but for most of us, before we've created our first memory, our map of reality is pretty much set, not in stone, but it's there by the time we're 4 or 5 years old. Our map of what's safe, what's not safe, how lovable we are, how we get love, how we avoid punishment, all of that is kind of in there. And we have parents and caregivers early on who hopefully have our best interest in mind, hopefully are doing their best, but they have their own hopes and fears and expectations that they heap upon us. And then we go to school and we have teachers, principals, and guidance counselors who do the same. And then we go to university or college and we have professors and deans who do the same. And then we get out into the world and we have colleagues and bosses and CEOs and donors and et cetera and so on who have the same. It's different expectations and so on. And I think what happens to us is a lot like what happens to Alice through Wonderland, is trying to configure ourselves and fit in so that we belong, so that we can get love and belonging and be liked and feel like we are included. And over the years and in the decades, enough of this expectation detritus builds up and becomes sediment, and we're buried. Our true selves, I think, become buried under these layers so that we're this tiny little small authentic person deep down somewhere in here wanting to get out, but it's scary. And oftentimes we don't know precisely who we are because of all these expectations and so on going on out here. My day job is to be a leadership development consultant. Over the last few years, I've had the honor to work with coming up on 1,000 different leaders, and these are people who, they wear the suits and they walk around and they look very, very important, and they act very, very important. But when you can get them alone in a room, and there's very few of them, and they open up, they have the exact same types of fears and vulnerabilities that all of us have. These people who you would think have it all together. You look at them and you go, "That maybe one day I'll get to that place." Nobody's got it figured out. I've kind of come to that conclusion. Everybody deals with imposter syndrome. Everybody deals with feelings of I'm not enough. Everybody deals with feelings of when is it going to happen for me? All of these doubts and the self-criticism that goes off in the back of our heads, I think people deal with that. And the way that we deal with it, and we see it in Alice as different characters try to become who they feel like they need to be in certain moments. People, we build defense mechanisms. We put on masks. This is who I need to be in this situation, and this situation, and that situation. We put on our armor to protect ourselves from criticism. We build walls to protect ourselves even further from criticism, from being hurt. Because if I show you who I am, and you don't like that person, then what do I do? But if I can show you the mask, and you don't like that, at least I've got this person deep down inside who's hiding, that I haven't shown you. But maybe or maybe not, you would like that person. I don't know, but for sure I can show you the facade. And the tragedy of it, and I think the irony of it is, it's this protection that we put up to protect ourselves, where we feel like maybe I can fit in, maybe somebody will like me. It's the irony of that is this protection is what creates for us these magnificent prisons of isolation, where we're separated from others because I'm trying so hard to protect myself. And when we take that stuff away, remove the mask, the armor, take down the wall, and we step out from behind it, and we let that little person buried under all these years of expectations and hopes and fears of others to step out and say, "Hi, this is me. This is what I like. This is what I'm passionate about. These are my hobbies. Here's some weird things about me, but they're weird, but I like them." That's when we get truly connected to others, because on the horizon, that's when we see others walking up and they wave back at us and say, "I like that stuff too. I'm afraid of that too. I have that vulnerability too." And that's when we build true connections with other people, I think, when we say, "This is me." And that's why Amy and I ultimately wrote this opera, was to give people the space, hopefully the occasion, to come see a show and leave feeling like it's okay for you to be who you are, fully, unapologetically, who you are out in the world, this wonderful, lovely, flawed, unique human being who's worth knowing, who has this unique voice that's worth being heard. And I hope that happens for everybody in the room, because you deserve that. And that's the journey that we've written Alice into. She encounters this condescending caterpillar who, we used Joseph Campbell's hero's journey and 7-point story structure to kind of map this out. So the caterpillar is Alice's first wise guide, who is rude and condescending. She's kind of confused by him. She's, why is he behaving this way? She has compassion for him. He frustrates her, but he's right in the end. Even though he's kind of rude and condescending, he asks her, "Alice, who are you?" And she says, "My name is Alice." And Alice has this little acrostic. She says, "My name is Alice, A.L.I.C.E., adventurous, likable, imaginative, curious, entertaining," right? She does that little thing. And I think that's kind of what we do as human beings, is we say, here's my role. I'm a director, a composer, a librettist, a professional, a dad, a husband, a partner. And I'm kind and loving and driven and ambitious, or whatever these things that we, again, these are the walls, I think, that we put out in front of ourselves. So she starts into this acrostic. "My name is Alice, A.L.I.C.E., and the caterpillar interrupts her and says, "I didn't ask for your name. Who are you?" And she doesn't quite get it. And so she goes through this process from the caterpillar to the Duchess, which if you haven't read the book, I don't know that the Duchess appears in very many of the films, but she is a nightmare of a human being, but really fun. Amy wrote this brilliant "At You" duet, because there's a cook in there using too much pepper, and so Alice and the Duchess have this "At You" at each other throughout. But she's not very nice to Alice, and Alice is left very confused. But what she what does happen is she does meet this mysterious Cheshire cat who's grinning at her. And the Cheshire cat is her second wise guide who helps move her in the direction that she ought to go. And the cat doesn't tell her this, but the cat understands this is Alice's journey. And the cat is wise because she knows who she is. She pops in and out of existence in Wonderland, to our world here, and to other worlds across the multiverse. And at one point, Alice says, well, who are you? Do you know who you are? To the cat. And the cat says, I am me. And Alice says, who is me? And the cat says, I is a cat. And Alice says, I already know that. And the cat says, yes, and so do I. The cat is just very convinced of who she is, and she's right. She's genuine, this authentic creature, showing Alice this is how to do it. You don't have to have all of these words attached to yourself. You just have to be you. And that's quite enough. And so the cat sends her off to the Hatter's table where Alice enjoys this really fun tea party where she gets what she wants. Her motivation for the whole first act is to eschew stepping into adulthood, because Victorian England wasn't awesome for women, just to be blunt about it. So she didn't want that. She wanted to stay a child and play all the time. And that's what the Hatter offers her. Stay with us. If you stay with us here a little longer at our table, you can have a tea party with us for forever, because he's cursed and stuck in time. And Alice will inherit the same curse should she stay long enough. And she rejects this offer and leaves. She gets what she wants, but she rejects it and recognizes that's not really what I need. And she goes off. That's the end of Act 1. It's her low point. Act 2 picks up. She's lost and alone in the woods of Wonderland, wandering alone, trying to figure out who am I, trying to get back home. And she encounters the cat for the second time. And here the cat directs her to go see the queen. She has to confront the queen. And the queen in the opera kind of exists on two axes. There's this horizontal axis where she is external to Alice. She is every bully, every narcissist, every gaslighter, etc., and so on that you've ever met in your life. And the queen tries to make people small. And the queen is also Alice's inner voice. It's that inner critic that we all have that says to us, you shouldn't have said that. You should say that. You ought to do this. You should do that. It's that little yappy voice in the back of our heads that diminishes us and makes us small. And the cat knows Alice must overcome this inner critic and these external malignant narcissists in order to be able to stand firmly in who she is, whether she's alone, whether she has all the accolades, the degrees on the wall, or she's got nothing, that she can stand alone. And instead of standing behind this wall of A.L.I.C.E, adventurous, likable, imaginative, curious, entertaining, Alice recognizes at the end, as the queen is trying to take that acrostic from Alice and say, you are awful, you're a liar, you're insolent. And she's taking Alice's words and using them against her. At the end, instead of entertaining, Alice stops the queen, shuts it down, and says, enough. And the E becomes enough. And that's how the opera ends, is Alice fully embracing herself, saying, my name is Alice, and I'm enough. And that's what we hope anybody who comes to see the show walks away feeling, is that no matter where you are in your life, on your success journey, on your professional journey, your relationship journeys, your personal journey, that you walk away feeling like, I am enough, that you're good enough, just as you are. I believe that deep in my bones, that, yeah, we have room to grow and change, etc., and so on, but that's not what this is about. It's about, at the base of it, you are enough, just as you are. And I've watched Amy step into that and live a life more and more into that as she wrote Alice, as we came to understand that Alice is Amy. When I was unpacking boxes after we got married and I'm putting stuff on the bookshelf, I'm pulling out her books. Alice, Alice, Alice. I'm like, oh, she really does like Alice. She's always loved this story, and then finally wrote an opera about it, and she and I just got so close to each other through it, both to one another and to ourselves, as we came to understand, the opera and how that was going to affect us, and Amy really helped me understand what Wonderland is about. I remember saying early on, there's these weird creatures, and they're crazy and silly, and they just do these weird things. And Amy says, no, 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 no. They seem silly to Alice, but these creatures are very serious about what they're up to. And they don't understand Alice, and she doesn't understand them, and they miss each other. And that creates this dissonance inside Alice to question herself and wonder, what's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with her. It's just the world around her doesn't make sense. So we wrote this for everybody, and we wrote this also for people who are neurodiverse and trying to struggle to sort that through. And so this is, I think, my favorite part of the talk, is to introduce the most special person in the world to me, to you, is the composer of Alice, the opera, Amy Scurria.
Am I good? Great. I haven't seen Zane present in a very long time, so that was a treat, and I'm trying not to be emotional right now. I have thought for nearly 2 years now about this kind of talk, so I am somewhat nervous, but I have met so many friends here. I think for all of us it's such a joy to be in a space where we share the commonality of the joy of opera. We all love this medium so much. So as Zane alluded to, we wrote this opera during the pandemic, and when the world started to open up, I started to say to Zane, I'm not doing well. And Zane's a very supportive partner, friend, creative partner, but he said, babe, no one's doing well. And I'd say, okay, that's true. We're all struggling with this. What does this mean when we go back out into the real world? What is the real world anymore? And I kept coming back to this. No, I'm really not doing well. And that went on, and it got worse and worse and worse. Flash forward to my self-discovery of living my way into a diagnosis of level 2 autism. I say level 2 because autistic adults, we reject, and it's becoming more and more accepted in the diagnostic world. We do not use high functioning and low functioning. Those terms are based on the observations of the autistic person. And I can stand here and tell you very confidently that the observation of the autistic person and the autistic person's, whoops, it's the mic, the autistic person's experience are vastly different. The diagnostic, the observations of autistic people historically has been built upon white boys. Well, surprise, there are those of us who are not white boys. So you can imagine when the diagnostic is built upon the observation of white boys, girls, women, non-white boys, non-white women have completely fallen through the cracks, and I was one of those people. I spent my life feeling like something was wrong with me. I spent part of my life thinking I might be schizophrenic. I hid this all. I hid in dark closets, played with my rock collections, and obsessed over music. And at the age of three things happened. I taught myself how to read, because the autistic brain loves patterns. I love puzzles. And what is music other than puzzles? So creating music is just, Zane and our son know that, okay, she's at it. She's probably gone for a while. I can go into composing and feel like it's 10 minutes, and they'll tell me, you've been at it for 5 hours. Why don't you spend a little time with us? So I fell in love with Alice in Wonderland, the book Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, by born Charles Dodgson, written name Lewis Carroll. I fell in love with, irrevocably in love with music. And so flash forward to a life lived in joy, in confusion, in hiding a lot of aspects of myself. Zane alluded to masking. It is something that autistic women do a lot. And so the past 2 years have been a joyful and grief-filled process of unmasking myself. Because a mask for an autistic person is a damaging thing. I think a mask for anyone is not always healthy, but we all do it, as Zane said. But a mask for an autistic person is extremely damaging. I don't want to get too much into the negatives because all you have to do is Google autism and you'll read all kinds of negative things about us. But I will say about autistic women, 9 out of 10 of us will be sexually assaulted. Our average lifespan is 35, and suicide amongst us is amongst the highest of any group. Being autistic is not difficult. I love being autistic. If I had a choice to live a life again, wouldn't that be wonderful? There's so many lives I want to live. I would come back as a pilot and then come back again as a musician and then who knows what, a chef, I don't know. But if I had a choice, I would 10 times out of 10 times choose my autistic brain. So being autistic is not difficult. Living in a world that is not built for me is very difficult. So that's why living my way into a diagnosis has been so life-changing for me. I wear these sunglasses because the lights are too bright. You may have seen me walking around with headphones and people think, oh, she must be listening to something. And no, I'm just protecting my ears because things are too loud. Fabrics are, you know, little too, I don't know what, too fabric-y. So understanding this about myself, understanding autistic adults to understand this about ourselves gives us tools to self-advocate, to inform, to reframe this idea of what is autism. Because we don't all look like what we imagine as the autistic white boy. Help me, I'm getting a little caught up in... Yeah, so, like I said, I'm nervous. This is a lot to, thank you. This is a lot, because a lot of this stuff I have hidden very deeply inside. And so to come out and say, you know, noise is too loud, I go home and hide in my closet still. I have this hug blanket that helps me. You know, I am different. I felt different my entire life, and I never knew why. And I felt outside of everything. I didn't know how to join in. I'm just going to try not to get emotional. And I didn't know why. And, you know, to try so hard in your life and just not get it, and people don't get you, is hard and a very lonely place to be. And so thank God for music. I'm sure we all feel that way. I know that we can all at some point in our lives say that music saved us. And music saved me again and again and again. It was my safe place. But I do want to share with you about the autistic brain. Because in this course of discovering about myself and understanding myself more, I wanted to know, what is it about my brain? I feel that my brain is different. I know it's different. When people talk to me, I don't always understand them. When I talk to others, they don't always understand me. We might act like we understand each other, but we really don't. Zane and I, before we knew I was autistic, would miss each other. And after my diagnosis, we both said, oh, and we were able to talk to each other differently and meet each other in the middle much more easily. So our brains, when we develop from childbirth up until around the age of 8 or 9, don't quote me on this, not a scientist, but I have read a lot about autism to understand more about myself. We all go through what's called synaptic pruning. Synapses in our brains, so as a little girl I was obsessed with trees, and by the way, I heard the trees speaking to one another. Imagine a little girl trying to tell people, hey, the trees are speaking to one another. And after several years of this, how many times I was accused of being on drugs, so I stopped sharing with people. And 30 years later, I ran through the house, Zane remembers, waving the article, the scientists say the trees are speaking to one another. I was right, and no one listened. And so the validation of that and the loneliness of that, having heard the trees, I can feel them, I can hear them. So my brain, when I was young, an A.L.I.C.E, so autistic adults, we use the term autistic to describe ourselves, and A.L.I.C.E to describe the rest of the world not autistic. An A.L.I.C.E brain sheds around 50 to 67% of their synapses. For sociopaths, it's more. They shed too many synapses. An autistic brain sheds around 16% of our synapses. So some might say we have too many synapses. I, again, love my experiences in this world. I say I just have enough. I have plenty, and I love having too many synapses. But this, again, not a scientist, but I think a lot about this, and I've been theorizing that I think this is why lights are too bright, sound is too loud, things feel too intense. I feel, now I'll go into the good part. When I listen to music, I feel it through my blood like someone's just injected me with a drug. But I haven't done hard drugs. People describe it to me, and I say, that sounds like my everyday, so I'm good, thank you. But when I listen to music, what friends who have tried hard drugs describe to me is probably close to what I feel. So it makes sense that I've tried to craft a life around music, creating music. It's what I love to do. It's where I live every day. I've got music happening in my mind, in my ears. As a little girl, I heard music outside even when I knew it wasn't being played. I could hear it so clearly sometimes that I can feel my eardrums vibrate even when no one's playing anything. It's a wonderful experience. So creating Alice, again, Zane said, I am Alice. I fell in love with her as a little girl because I saw myself. Alice is so literal. When the first time my mom read me the book, she read the portion that said, Alice's eye fell upon a box on the table, and I said, oh, gross. Because in my mind, I saw Alice's eye falling out of her head into the box on the table. Welcome to the autistic world, and why it's so hard to navigate. I don't do well with metaphors. If you spout metaphors to me, I used to just smile, and I might spout it later and really screw it up, and people would think, wow, she's not very smart, or what is she saying? So now I give myself permission to say, I'm sorry, I don't understand that. What do you mean? Because the loneliness of not knowing that I am autistic was too much. And I want to honor myself as much as I want to connect with other people. It's such a myth that we don't want to connect with people. It's such a myth. Boys too. You know, again, based on the observations. The observation is not the autistic experience. So I created Alice because I had to. I created Alice because I love to. And I created Alice because, as Zane said, we wanted to gift to anyone watching, anyone experiencing it, to understand that no matter who you are, no matter how different, no matter how lonely you might feel, whoever you are, whatever you are, it is always enough. And so we're thrilled. We're so thrilled. I'm going to pass it on to Bob Breault now, who has been such an inspiration and a friend and a support. And we are so excited about the production. Oh my gosh! And I'm pinching myself because I get a production with full orchestra. Can you believe it? Thank you.
I have to tell you, I chose to do Alice a year ago. They were set up at a booth, and I was running around and walked past the booth several times because I'm the photographer, right? So I'm zip, 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 zip. And I just couldn't. Every time I would go by, Amy would be like, stop and talk. Stop. And so we connected. I went home and listened to her music, and that's where we really connected. choosing an opera, Doug, you know, people that produce, choosing an opera for a university with funds limited the way they are I take that responsibility extremely. I think it's one of the most important things that I do, choosing repertoire, and a lot of thought goes into it, a lot of rational thinking, a lot of, you know, consulting with my colleagues. In this case, I let my instincts tell me. My instincts drove me to just say, by the time we had left the conference, I'm seriously considering Alice. Can you write a full orchestration? And she's like, yep. I could see her mind going, that's going to take a lot of time and energy, and yet she was willing, and she's got it done. And it looks fantastic. I can't wait to hear the orchestra do it. I had some notes prepared, but inspired by what I heard, and the lot of thought that went into this before, I have to say, getting funding to bring, we're gonna bring them out to Salt Lake City for a week. Getting that funding was a lot easier because of the autism component. It seems like there's a lot of people that really do want to serve, you know, that they're going to support something like this. It's different. Bob Charles, is that how you pronounce your last name? Yeah, Bob showed me his Alice in Wonderland in Salt Lake City, and I was intrigued. And it's nothing against, you know, your writing, but the thing that got me really excited about this Alice is that it's somewhat autobiographical. The story there, and I don't know how I'm going to tell it. We'll continue to talk about it, by the way. They're so wonderful to work with. We had Zoom meetings, and I want it not to be obvious, but I want anybody that's in there that's challenged with themselves, find themselves masking, find themselves, you know, sort of having something in common with Alice. I want them to see this moment. I mean, when I watched it, there's a video, when I watched the ending where she says, I am enough, I had the kind of emotional, response that I have when the Count gets down on his knee and begs forgiveness at the end of Figaro. That kind of cathartic feeling that comes from great opera, that's already there. And so the way I'm going to stage it, and they're absolutely supportive of this. We don't have a huge budget for sets this year. We never do. But we're going to set it with the media, sort of suggestions of the media being possible rabbit holes, so that in the end, we're going to be amongst the symbolic TikTok, whatever that stuff's called, you know, where everybody's on their phones. So they're allowing me to be creative and put my own stamp on this story, and yet it's essentially going to be about her quest and her fulfillment of finding herself. So I do want to leave some room for questions, because I know that you probably all have questions you want to ask Amy and Zane, and me maybe. I just want to talk about one other thing. And Doug, I don't know if you experienced this, but there are a lot of students these days that are autistic. And unlike in the past, where it was clear to me, I'm a bit autistic too. So, and I was in second grade when I found that out. So there is a connection. And in my class, I think I counted like 9 people that have autism. So what a great example you will be to them. And so when they come out, we're not going to just talk about composition with the composers. We're not just going to talk about history. They're going to also talk about autism, and I think it's going to really connect with our students, those who have it and those who know somebody, which is everybody. So there's a great message in this telling of Alice that was very appealing. But like I said, I made this choice instinctively. And my wife said, I hope you don't regret that. And with every meeting we have, I find myself being able to say, I don't regret it in any way. In fact, I think it's one of the smartest things I've ever done. So with that, do you have questions? Do you want them to follow up on anything? Because I think we just introduced a lot of things that you might want to expand upon. Why don't you come up with me and we'll. Anybody have questions? Yeah.
I don't know if it's a question or not. My name is Deanna. I'm married to Bob Charles, and my son is in charge of the autism program for the island of Kauai.
Oh, wow.
And it would be wonderful, I don't know how this would ever happen, for the two of us to sit down and talk to each other. Because I don't know that he interacts with any adult autistic people. And I know that the people he serves, he serves the administrators, he does litigation in Honolulu, he serves the children, the teachers, everybody. But for him to sit down with an adult autistic person, a female, I think would be absolutely fabulous. So we should carry on the conversation.
I'd love to chat. I'd love to also share that on my professional website, amyscurria.com, I've got a tab that says Autism Resources. So I'll encourage you to, all of you, if you're curious, please go to those resources, because thankfully, I'm not the only adult autistic person being open about this. There is an entire movement right now, and I plugged into that movement, and I've become part of this incredible community of autistic adults, and mostly autistic women. But there's an entire movement, and so as much as I'd like to talk with your son, and I'd be happy to, there are resources out there that of people who are only doing that. So I am, I'm a composer, and I'm digging deeply into autism to understand myself and to be able to convey to others. But there are professional autistic adults who are really going out there and talking about it, and I've been learning from them. So there are videos that convey a lot of what I've shared today. There's a doctor named Dr. Jack Den Houting, who has been a huge inspiration for me. She started an entire website called Reframing Autism, and so I pull a lot of my resources from that. But I would love to connect. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Tony. The premiere is Utah Opera and Symphony. And just hearing you talk about this, I'm thinking this can be so helpful to so many people. And I'm wondering what the possibility is to get performances throughout the United States and also in Europe that people could relate to the story.
Well, what we're doing about that is I've already started to prepare to have this videoed and have a very nice complete video of it, of which we'll be able to splice up and make excerpts, and so we can make a 3-minute presentation of some of the highlights. And of course I'll talk to Amy and Zane about what those things are. I think having that kind of thing on a website, and guess what? I don't have to get copyright, right? We can spread the word that way. And again, here's this responsibility. That means my students are going to have to be extremely good. and they'll be that. They'll work really, really hard because they feel connected already to this living thing, this new living thing that they can own. And I think giving ownership to a young artist is one of the most critical things we can do. So I think we'll own this as a community, but we'll also provide a way to spread that word. And then it's going to be up to other people to say, yeah, I like this, and so that it can get some wings. Go ahead.
I would just suggest you bring tissues when you give your presentation.
Oh, sorry.
Just beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, another thing we're doing, and I didn't realize this was even a thing, but we're going to do a sensory show.
Oh, and I'm so grateful, yeah. And we're partnering with, your development person at the university is partnering with, I keep forgetting the name, Culture City? Culture Play? An organization that goes out and creates sensory-friendly
Right. So
experiences at any artistic, music, art.
So we're doing a matinee, which we've never done before, on the Saturday. So we'll have 2 shows on the Saturday, and that'll be the sensory show. And that means all the lights are up, and it's a very different kind of thing. And so that'll be new for us too. But yeah, it's funny how when I presented this, so many people in the university got excited. Development got excited. Other departments, even in the med school. So it's like a community of support, rather than me just saying, I want to do, Rape of Lucretia, and here's why it's important to do rape. No, that's a hard sell. This has been a really, really easy sell. And once they meet Amy and Zane, I think they got even. We had a development person in on our very first production meeting. That's the first time that's ever happened, and I largely think that's because of, this angle, the autism. So.
I just want to
2 minutes, okay, thank you.
I just want to say something, Amy and Zane. I sat next to you yesterday, and I wish I had met you this way before yesterday, but I want to just encourage you. I am an educator who has had many, many of my students come in with autism, and I have no tools. Hearing you speak has just, in this one moment, has given me so much more insight into those students than I can.
Oh, okay.
So I want you to be very brave, if that's the word I can use. I want you to, you stood up and said how afraid you are. I want you to know that your impact is truly, just by being who you are and sharing, has really impacted me today.
Thank you.
So just remember that if you ever get afraid. I've got
Thank
you
you.
back, and I want you guys to move.
I told you so.
Please do this, because you've given me so much more insight than anybody else has given me to help my students.
Thank you.
Thank you. Doug.
Real quickly, Bob, just in general, for there's so many wonderful composers here.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the gift to all of us, right? But what was wonderful, I realized about 3 months ago, that the 3 pieces that we were seeing, like I walked by Amy's table many times too. We just didn't have room, for example, for a full-length piece.
Right,
I'm
no.
so thrilled that you're doing it.
Yeah.
But all 3 pieces that I remember being presented at NOA last year in the actual presentations, Alice was there with the table, Anthony Brandt with Cassandra, which we did at LSU, and that wonderful, hilarious Rock Don Giovanni that was done, that Paul Hotaling did at the University of Alabama. So in terms of the service of NOA with new works, hopefully that sets an example.
How many composers here today?
Oh, nice.
Great to meet and talk to everybody yesterday.
Yeah.
How many people have composed Alice in Wonderland?
Yeah. And?
I also wanted to thank Zane for the way you introduced the piece and what you talked about, because it's a universal message, whether one has autism or not, or any other challenges. I just thought that was really powerful as well, and a nice way to connect. So as an audience member, I'm going to understand the piece in in my own terms, and it's not just about autism. So I think there's a universality to this piece that is very exciting, and I think much needed right now.
Thank you all for coming. It's an early in the day, and we appreciate your being here. Thank you.